Hi, this is Steve from Left Shore Construction. I'm here today to talk about Marblecrete plaster repair. What Marblecrete is it's a stucco with chipped marble sprayed into the finish. And it was very trending in the early 20th century, from about 1920 to 1940, and there really hasn't been a lot of it done since 1950. The homeowners have lived here their whole lives, and they would like to keep it like it was originally, and everybody that they talk to says that it can be patched with the wrong colors and then painted, which kind of destroys the whole beauty of the system anyways. That makes it unique, and they wanted to keep that. This building's been here for 98 years. It's in good shape, and I think we can make it last another 98 years. With Marblecrete stucco, I don't get a lot of repairs in it because it's a very, very durable material and it doesn't usually come apart. And if I get a repair, it's because somebody hit it with a vehicle or they're doing some remodeling. In this case, we had a roof leak up here and water was getting inside. And so it's coming down inside and it's getting between the base coat and the finish coat and causing it to release. It would be less likely to release if the guys who did it originally had put a scratch coat on it instead of troweling their first coat smooth, because it's supposed to have like a mechanical bond, not just a chemical bond. And so that's where you see here where I've had to replace it. I've put these lines in it that kind of helps the second coat grab into it and makes it pretty much impossible to get off. There are 4 different colors of marble in here, plus some abalone shell. In order to find these rocks, you have to take a sample of the building and send it to a mining company, and they send you back all the rocks that match your building, and then you got to find the formula of how many of which rock you need in order to match it. The chartreuse hasn't been mined in 20 years. You can't get it anymore, so I found a different color of green that I'm going to put in there so we at least have that green effect, but it won't be exact. Marblecrete repair will never be exact, but you can get it to look pretty close to where it's not really noticeable. I get my marbles from Manufacturers Mineral in Seattle. They've got a huge selection, and almost everything that was once available is still available. Mixture of stucco mix that I've made. It's made out of white cement, white sand, and lime. Right now what we're going to do is we're going to wash the rocks out. Basically taking this bucket and put a piece of mesh in there, put the lid on it, cut some holes in the bottom, and I take the rocks and I pour them in here and I give them a quick little rinse. Those are my clean rocks, and then I have water here that's got all kinds of dust powder in it from the rocks, and that's what I use to recolor the plaster so that it doesn't come out pure white. It's a little bit too light still, so concrete colorant I'm going to add to it to darken it just a little bit so that it blends a little closer to what's on the wall. So the kids that grew up here used to get in trouble by their mom all the time because they would go rock collecting off the walls and start picking little cool looking rocks off the walls, and then one of them would go outside and hit baseballs against the garage. You know, it can hold up pretty well, but if you start scraping it and hitting it with balls, it's probably going to go bad eventually. This blue bonding agent that's on the wall is called Weldcrete. You put it over old material because when you put the new material on, it pulls the moisture out of the wall, out of the new material so fast that it actually breaks the bond, and it'll cause it to break loose. And so we've got that everywhere, but I can't put it on the edges here because it'll be visible on the surface of the wall. And so in order to break that suction, is what we call it, right before you start putting your new material on, you take some water and just wet down the edges real good, all the way around. When I started this repair, it was about right here. You could see it was all loose, and so then you get in there and you just kind of start scraping on it and you find out that it's all broke loose, clear out, and sometimes it can spread out for long, long ways. Luckily, we only have this one little area right here to do. You've got to scrape it back clean and come to a nice clean edge, which is pretty easy to do because the stuff really doesn't want to come off most of the time. And so once you get back to where it's well bonded, you'd need a hammer and a chisel to get it off of there. Once you wet the edges, you should probably have your material on within about 10 minutes. When you start out, you kind of want to put a tight coat on everywhere and kind of stay away from the edges, because even with the water on there, it's still going to pull the moisture out pretty quickly. And so you wait until the last thing to go work into the edges. So when you put on your first coat, you're putting on basically just aggregate thickness. But then when you get to the next level, this is kind of a tricky part, because if you put on too thick, then your patch is going to stick out of the wall. If you put it on too thin, it's got to stick in the wall. And so you're trying to put it just at the right level to match up with what you've got on the wall at this point. Once you get the mud in on here, then you're going to come back and start spraying rocks on the wall, which in this case, we're just going to throw them on by hand because the spray machines are too aggressive for patching. Getting into the corners here, you got to put your mud on and float it out just right. It requires a little bit more skills than the rest of the wall. And if you do have a lot of broken corners, you might try to find a professional plaster to do this rather than trying to do it yourself. So see how I've gotten around the edges here? And I'm just kind of scraping it down to where it pretty much just lines up with what's already there. Same with this edge. You want to just trowel it up just right to the edge there. Not past it, not short of it. And just blend it right in there. Because if you overlap the existing, then you'll have a big lump around the edge of your patch. It'll look like a giant fat ring, and it's not very pretty looking. The dry time in the middle of the wall is probably 30 minutes or so, but right along the edges here where it dries up really fast, you want to be pretty quick on it. You want to be there within 5 to 10 minutes if you can. If you get into some bigger stuff, you probably want to have more than one person doing it. The new cement will never match the old cement because the old cement's dirty. It's been weathered and worn, and you've got vehicle exhaust and all kinds of things that are in the surface of it. And so no matter what you do to it, you can't really match age. So you just get it as close as you can. And this will darken a little bit as it dries, so it'll blend a little better than what you're seeing right now. Most contractors that tell you that you need to remove it or paint it or things like that, it's essentially simply because they don't know how to repair it, or they don't know anybody who knows how to repair it. There aren't a lot of people left around that can, at least not in this area. And I find that a lot with plastering finishes in the area I live in, where they always seem to want to just take it off. Any other siding besides stucco, it probably would have been replaced 3 times by now. Now we're going to throw some rocks into this section right here before it gets too dry. It's a good idea to throw down a clean sheet of plastic, because as you're throwing them, you're going to lose about 30 to 50% of what you're throwing onto the ground. And so if you throw down a clean sheet of plastic, you can catch those and you can reuse those. Stick along these edges where it's drying out a little faster. You need to throw it harder than in the middle. And so you throw along the edges first, just to try and get it to blend. So you can see how many of these I'm losing. So now I'm going to throw them in the middle. I'm going to throw a lot lighter. You see where I threw it hitting this edge and it took the corner and pushed it over a little bit. So before I go any further, I should probably push that back a little bit and reshape that corner. In the chemistry of the world of cement products, having many different sizes of aggregate into your material actually strengthens the bond of the mud itself. It increases the longevity of the whole system altogether and the strength. So as you can see, I'm just reusing the rocks off the plastic here now as I work my way down. Since I put that sheet of plastic, I can just keep reusing these rocks over and over again, and that just saves you a lot of time in mixing rocks and cleaning rocks. And if you get into bigger jobs, it will save you a lot of money in rocks, which the rocks themselves don't cost much. I think they're about $12 for 100 pounds. So they're not expensive, it's just getting them to where you live. I live in Portland, Oregon, and the nearest mine for this product is in Seattle, just outside of Seattle. It was $175 for shipping and $38 for material. You think you got the pattern about right, you just kind of look for bare spots and fill them in. And once you get the rocks on, you wash up your tools here. You want to do what we call setting the rocks, because you've thrown them in there, but they're not really pushed in right. And so you just kind of come along here and just lightly tap on them to get them to set into the mud, so that they stay on there better. In this particular project, I noticed that they're not set real good. I mean, there's a lot of unevenness in it, so I'm trying not to set them too hard, because otherwise it'll come out too flat. I want it to be a little lumpy so that it matches the existing. As you're setting the rocks, you're also kind of tapping the corner in, straightening it out, just trying to get it to be relatively straight. But once again, like, you know, I'm matching an existing building, so I don't want it actually to be perfectly straight, because it won't look like the rest. Because the whole object is to make it look as close as you can to what, so it doesn't look like it's been repaired. Get the rest of this done here, and just sort of blending it in with what I already put on there. I like plastering as a way to earn a living, because every job is unique. So that's what makes plastering interesting to me, because when I leave here, the next job I go to, I'm gonna be inside somebody's house trying to recreate some sort of texture out of interior plastering. Put your plastic down, and you go around the perimeter. I'm either waving them up and rolling them off and trying to spread them out, or I take, and when I throw, I go like that, because you want them to spread out. You don't want them to come out in little clumps. You want them to be more like it was a full spray. Set the rocks into the wall. Just push them in just a little bit. Make sure that they're keyed into the mud so that they don't fall off later. And it kind of evens out how far they stick out. And I'll touch up the bottom here. And that is your Marblecrete repair. And so I want more people to know how to do this. So do try this at home.